Welcome to the Cricket8 Podcast. I'm Jarrod Kimber. With me is the Rooster, Rob Barron, and we're going to be talking about a few different things, but we're going to start with this. Should Jonathan Trott be the coach of England, Rob Barron? Because I saw Stephen Finn, I think, wrote an article about it. I've seen some others talking about it. Jonathan Trott's been doing good of recent times. He's just got the Pretoria job as well. Matthew Mott is gone, and I promise you, you probably never saw Matthew Mott play. Matthew Mott was maybe the most turgid top order player I ever saw play for Victoria. At one stage, he hit the ball off the square and he cried. Jonathan Trott is more in that kind of mould. But I just wondered your thoughts on Jonathan Trott as potential England white ball supremo.
No, don't like it. Too boring. It's deeply ingrained in his psyche that you nudge it about. I was there at the MCG that day when Trott and Bell pushed Australia's quite good bowling around for the whole afternoon and both got 50s or 70s or something off 120 balls each, and were genuinely hugging each other, great big grins as they walked off the pitch for the England's 270 or something. And then Finch got half the runs by himself in an hour and chased with 15 overs to spare. And England were like, what happened there? What on earth's going on? They're scoring at more than a run. I think him, isn't he supposed to be doing the Afghanistan job anyway? Has he sacked that off to go and do the Pretoria job? Is that
No, I would assume it's one of those things where, we have international coaches sometimes do franchises now. So it has happened. Andrew McDonald did it. And so there's been a few guys do that now. So I would assume that's the case. Here's my issue. I don't care how he played as a player because Matthew Mott was turgid as hell and the Australian women's team attacked and the England team attacked under Matthew Mott, right? No issue. Rahul Dravid just won a World Cup, right?
Yeah, yes, fair enough, yeah.
No problem with that. But we have actually seen Jonathan Trott as a coach. And what we have seen is Afghanistan play a very different style of cricket to what England is going to play. Doesn't mean that Trotty can't just change and go with something else. But I'd have to be pretty convinced that because the way that Afghanistan play is exactly the style that you were just talking about then, right? It's exactly the way he played. So is it that he got into Afghanistan and that was the best method, which is fine? Or is it, I am Jonathan Trott, I play this way, I coach this way, I like meat?
Yeah, I think to be fair, in that World Cup, they played kind of the right way and just tried to keep the openers getting a score of about 120 on those pitches was a really good idea. And then over to the bowlers, and Faruqi was amazing. And then they totally blew up in the semi, didn't they? They just got semi-finalitis or whatever. That was really bad. But yeah, Trott did fine. I really liked Trott's input in the let's slow it down when we're ahead on DLS. That was funny. He sniped the back of Nave's hamstring, I think, from the stands. All that.
He had a string on. He literally had the string, didn't he, that he pulled?
Yeah. I liked all that. I don't think Trott is going to be the guy. Also, charisma-wise,
he has too much.
You have way too much, and the press conferences will just go on forever, and he'll be cracking jokes left, right, and centre, and all that sort of stuff. Now, I don't think he's the man now. If he proves that he's a really good coach for another team, then maybe next time. But I don't see it.
Do you want to hear my personal Jonathan Trott story?
Yes.
So I know Trotty a little bit. Obviously, he's very close with George Dobell. And so he would come over and chat to us, especially after he retired quite a bit. And me and Trotty got to know each other. And we did some work together as well. And one day, someone in the press box remembered that I had made a music video when I was younger.
Why have I not seen this, and why haven't
I can't believe I haven't said it to you?
Never mind whatever the hell this podcast is called. Let's just put that on live and talk about that for the rest of the day.
And I don't want to ruin the music video too much, but let's just say the music video is a bit out there, right? And during it, so Trotty then finds out about this. So then we show him, and he spends the whole time looking at this YouTube screen and then turning around to me like this. Just one thing I wanted to add to the Trott thing is they played the same way in the ODI World Cup as they did in the T20 World Cup. That makes me think that either it's 100% he just thinks that's how Afghanistan needs to play, or That is the style that Jonathan Trott likes, he trusts, and he goes with it. You can't play that style with England, though. But I thought it was an interesting one because he has been successful of recent times in 2 different World Cups now, two different formats, I should say, with a team that none of us really thought was going to have much of a say in either of those World Cups, and played some good cricket. So it was an interesting one by Stephen Finn. I don't think Jonathan Trott is probably one of the front runners, but he should probably get an interview. And then they should try and pick through actually what they can find from him. And then they should show him my music video again. All right.
Can we just stop there? And what is the URL for that YouTube video play? Or what's it called? I'm definitely going to find it. So you can either save me the time or I'll spend the rest of the day looking for it.
You won't find it, but I promise you the next time...
I will find it, Jarrod Kimber. I will bloody find it.
The next time we are having a late night poker game after a cricket game, we'll put it up on the big screen and you can enjoy it in all of its glory. All I will say is this: it does involve at various times Paris Hilton, a condom, and a bathtub. Let's get on to the IPL here for a moment. There's all these different things going on. There's a meeting at the moment, and it's great to see different people leaking different things. There was an article up on Cricinfo that seems to have disappeared, which usually wouldn't mean that it's not factual because it looked like it was very well resourced. It would probably mean that someone wasn't particularly happy that it was up at that stage, and it was taken down. There's lots of different things: player retentions, impact sub, playing once drafted, mini auctions, all these different things. So I'll go through them, but if you are in the comments and there's one I've missed or one of the rumors, from these meetings that I've missed that you want to bring out, please let us know in the comments, because I can see there's already a few of you in there. I see Jessica's in here, Saurabh is in here. Actually, it's just Jessica and Saurabh talking to each other, and someone whose name has been blanked out, like they've been redacted, which I kind of like that. But yes, let's start with this. So the impact sub looks like it is going to stay, but the owners seem to not be particularly keen, but the broadcasters love it. Rob Barron, thoughts?
I thought that Rohit and Kohli had both publicly said it was crap, and that would be the end of it. So I'm very surprised that they're persisting with it. I thought it made the game slightly worse, like net worse, because it just ended up... No one was really using it particularly great tactically. It was just we're elongating the batting order and that's the end of that. So it created... I thought it would create a few extra runs, and it created more extra runs than I thought because it freed up... You're going to go on about Golbis or somebody now. It freed up the other guys to play more aggressively, value their wickets slightly less because they knew they had the number 8 coming in. And we had some farcical situations. That KKR batting lineup was a total joke, like Ramandeep coming in at 9 or whatever. And he was hitting a 6 every 4 balls. It's fun. I get why the broadcasters like it because there's more sixes, isn't there? There's more runs and there's more sixes, and that's what they want. But we all got a bit bored of it. Even people that don't, get treated medically for their cricket addictions were getting a slightly fed up with 230 getting chased, and the Punjab one was very, very silly when they only lost 1 wicket chasing 260. And Bairstow has proved that he can't bat anymore. So what the hell happened that day? Like mega roads, loads of batting, no bowlers.
But the end of the tournament didn't actually tail off, though, didn't it? Like early in the tournament, everyone made 300 runs every innings, even if they didn't. The end of the tournament wasn't like that at all, right? It did actually come back. So maybe because we had so many big scores in one area, it's sort of slightly warped. The truth is that there have been more runs in all T20 competitions in the last year and a half outside of the World Cup, even without the impact sub. So I think players are just understanding this on a different level all the way through. But I get your point. I think we're going to end up with substitutions in cricket, and we'll end up with 15 players playing in a game, and we'll have 10 batters and 5 bowlers. And I would prefer that.
You're very wrong with that preference.
Yeah, I'm obviously not. But
because it leaves us with not getting incredible, highly skilled fast bowlers bowling at complete idiots, and that is one of cricket's very best things, and that must stay.
But it doesn't happen very often in T20 cricket anyway, right?
Yeah, but when it does, Jarrod.
Okay, what would you prefer? Mark Wood bowling to Mohammad Siraj once every 10 games, or would you prefer never to see Scott Styris bowl ever again?
Give me Wood to Siraj, please.
See,
not once every 10, every day.
I just think that I don't know, the Scott Styris, the Rian Parag bowling, oh my God, a whole lifetime of watching Darren Lehman pretend to bowl. I'm over it. Give me
Mate,
professional bowlers
what
against
about
professional batters.
India? What they're doing at the moment? They're going, right, we're going to go with 3 bowlers and then whoever else wants to bowl, and then finishing a T20 with Rinku and Sky and them both going for getting wickets and go for less than run a ball. Like where have we got to now with all this? Like,
I'm all for that
progressed.
because that's mad. All right, so the impact sub obviously should stay, and Rob's wrong. Okay, so there's a couple of other changes that have been talked about as well. I want to ask you this: forget uncapped and capped and right to match and everything else. On a very basic level, how many players should the IPL franchises be able to contract going into the next season? Or the next auction, I should say.
So, presumably the IPL is starting next week or the week after, because it's now going to be a 10-month season. That said, I think 4 is fine, and everybody else goes back into the pot, except, and I'm pretty genuine with this, actually. I think MS Dhoni is so far ahead of cricket. Like, he's so much bigger than cricket and so much bigger than the IPL. And you've only got to watch the last 10 minutes of that Mumbai Chennai innings when Hardik was bowling underarm to him to realise that is more than the game. Everybody there, the 750,000 people that got in the ground that day and the 50 million that were waiting outside, wanted to see Dhoni get given a ball that was exactly to his specification, that probably had a remote control in it somewhere, and wanted to see him get 18 or 4 or whatever it was, right? That was the best moment of the IPL for half the people that watched it. And even though we were talking about this before you joined us, even though his keeping standing back isn't all that, and he's not going to be that guy that does stuff in the middle, he's still really fun to watch for 5 balls against bad pace.
Yeah.
I think Dhoni should get an actual pass to Chennai can keep him for as long as they want, and no one argues with that.
Wow.
And he doesn't count as one of the 4. And then when Kohli wants to carry on making sure that Bangalore can't win the IPL for the next 15 years, he can do that too. And if you get to total legend status, you've broken the computer game, and you just get to stay in the team.
So there was the article I was talking about on Cricinfo was an article that said that they wanted MS Dhoni to be considered as an uncapped player. But the way that they got around that, of course, was what they were saying is if you haven't played international cricket in 5 years, you're uncapped. And so that you should go back. Of course, the better way of putting that out is if someone's going to continue to play in the IPL for years, there should be a senior former players situation. So you can keep picking Kohli or Dhoni or Ambati Rayudu or whoever it is that you want to be able to do that, because I think they've earned that right to be separate to everything else. So that was the article that was up on Cricinfo that no longer exists. So good on Chennai for trying to bring the Rob Barron rule to life. I love the idea of MS Dhoni suddenly becoming uncapped. It's like, can you re-become a virgin? Do you know what I mean? Like, can your virginity grow back? I'm not sure, but in Dhoni's case, that's what they tried to do. But I don't understand why. How many years are we into the IPL now? This will be the 17th year, 16th year?
It's 74 years now we've been watching this.
Why are teams only keeping 4 players? Like, that would never happen in NBA or the Premier League or a real sport. Why are we still pretending that this is a developing tournament when there actually has already developed? Why can't you keep 8 to 12 players minimum?
Good question. The reason why the IPL is way better than all the other leagues, and let's be honest here, is because they box it off and everybody's available and everybody plays in it, other than Pakistan players for political reasons. So therefore, you get teams having watch the 100, and it's like, oh, that guy did really well, and he's not playing for the rest of the season. He only plays 1 game.
Yeah.
And that guy, and then the Blast, it's like, well, sorry, we like the 100 better because of money. So sorry, we're going to have 7 weeks between the group stage and the quarterfinals. Good luck. None of the players are going to play in the quarterfinals that are playing now, and we'll just see who we can get for 10 grand a day or whatever. It's absolute nonsense. So what the IPL does well is it goes, right, this is the biggest thing in cricket, and if you're playing other cricket, no one gives a monkeys. And therefore, you end up with C teams playing test match cricket while the IPL's on. That South Africa team that they put out was an insult, because the IPL is the biggest thing in town. So the IPL needs to be boxed off and give it 7 weeks or something, not 12 or 15 and go, that's it. This is cricket's biggest thing. And you're right. If you want to they keep going on about identities. If you want to be a fan of Chennai or Mumbai or Delhi or whoever, then it's not just because they've got that one legend that's still knocking around that you want to support all the time. It's that they've got a team and that they're bringing young players through. And sure, you can have people signing and trading and stuff like that. That makes leagues interesting, that you're not, if you're not allowed to change your team, that's nonsense. But only for, it's a bit crap. But they're talking about 2 or 3. It's not they're talking about it could be 7 or 8, are they?
Well, so there's been, the leaks out of the meeting have been really interesting. It has gone up to close to 10 at times, some of the people.
Okay.
And some of it's gone down to 5 or 6. But you will like this. So essentially, there are a couple of teams who are saying the mega auction is done. We don't need it anymore. They'll obviously bring back a mega auction when they bring more sides in, which is what the only time the mega auction should ever be used again now is when you have new franchises come in, right? It should be a franchise specific draft. But so there are teams doing that. The 2 of the teams that don't want the mega auction anymore are KKR and Sunrisers. The teams who do want the mega auction are Delhi Capitals and Punjab.
Yeah, the shit teams.
The good teams are like, we're going to keep our squad. We're pretty happy with it. And the shit teams are like, we want to change our squad because we're not very happy with it. I think this is where the IPL needs to become just smarter and be like, we're not going to listen to the team owners on this. We're going to make a decision. We are now in a position where we no longer need to have a mega auction or anything else from that perspective because the league is strong enough and we can move on with that. So that's where I would be. It looks like player retention, and it's hard to tell because there are different, as I said, different leagues all the time. I would assume that when you look at right to match and player retention, you'll be looking at about 8 to 9 players by the look of it at the moment, which I think is getting towards the sort of levels that you should be able to keep your core, right?
Yeah.
At the very least. But there's another interesting one here, which is if they do keep the mega auction, Rob, there is a loophole that you and I have probably noticed, and a few other IPL fans have probably noticed before, of some international players think to themselves, why would I go in this year when there's a mega auction and I'm going to go in against a lot of different players and everyone's going to come in with their plans beforehand. Whereas actually, if I come in for a mini auction or a normal auction, in between all of this, I'm then in a situation where I can, if they need a fast bowler and I'm one of 2 on the list, I'm going to get overpaid no matter what. They're trying to come up with a loophole, with a way to stop players from doing that. My way of getting rid of that is to get rid of the mega auction in the first place, and everything's just a normal auction. But it is funny that the owners are now complaining that the players have worked this out. It's like, look, you're all billionaires. Just pay a little bit extra for Mitchell Starc and hope he comes good.
Yeah, I think, well, there's lots to it, but agents are going to find these ways, aren't they? And they're going to say, listen, mate, I mean, whoever was Thisara Pereira's is the best one ever because he plays in everything despite, not scoring runs or taking wickets. But you go, listen, mate, you can get 100K if you just join this team now. They want you, it's happy. Or sit there and then you become the only, whatever it is, off-spinning all-rounder. Or you become one of 3 fit fast bowlers if you manage to stay fit. And then you just get bank. Or if you target what you should do is get your play. If you're an agent, you get your players playing against India the week before whatever the auction is, and trying to do something good. And it's like, the billionaires. I think the IPL's issue is that a bit like cricket's issue in a broader sense is the guys with absolutely boatloads of money are trying to create something that isn't quite fair. It isn't quite cricket across the whole spectrum. It's just like, well, this is us, so we're going to have all these rules, and now you get all the other franchise leagues trying to come up with their own crazy rules. I mean, my favorite one ever was the one where they had the gong for the straight 6 that Gale kept aiming at. If you hit the gong, you get, I can't remember what it was it a car or was it 20 runs or something? But that kind of stuff is so farcical. That's a circus, isn't it, if you're doing that stuff? And when England, who are catastrophically bad at keeping hold of good things in the history of the country, but they had like, let's make it 12 if you get it here. Do you remember when T20 started? Let's make it 10 if you get it in that bit, 12 if you get it there. Do you remember that? They actually had different amount of runs that you could score in different places. If you try and muck about with the fabric of the game, you're going to ruin it for everybody. So the IPL need to be a bit more serious with, yes, it's nice to make rules so that we can still see this, but the impact sub is a bit of nonsense. Maybe have it so that the impact sub is you can use it whenever you want. Either innings, you've got one sub, then the tactical element comes into it a bit more, not just you've got 7 bats or 8 bats. Yeah, I don't know. Like, the IPL are going to do what they want, essentially, and it's kind of, 8 very rich men and women just kind of playing with a toy, and we all have to put up with it.
So there's a couple of interesting things out of what you said. So when I'm pretty sure this is true. Yeah, no, I think this has been reported before, but I've certainly heard it was one of the things they wanted to do for the 100 was take away LBW. And the broadcaster, I think it was Sky, said to them, "We're not putting it on TV if it doesn't have LBW. That's not cricket." And I love the idea that taking away, because I think they thought LBW was confusing for new fans. And so, yeah, it's also going to be really shit if people just stand in front of the stumps and slog. And the other one was the Big Bash, where the Big Bash, they were like, well, every time a ball gets hit into the crowd, people can keep it. And like it happened to be that Greg Chappell was in the meeting, and they said, "That's it. That comes from baseball, Greg." And Greg's like, "Yes, well, I played quite high level baseball, and that's because in baseball you have a new ball all the time. In cricket, it would completely ruin the fabric of the game." So we have seen all these sorts of things before. I think cricket should have already had substitutes by now, right? I just think that it's a twist of fate that we haven't had them so far. So I think we will have substitutes, but I do agree with some of the other things that you've said there. A couple of other things that you need to know: more salary cap. I'm going to go out on a limb, Rob, and say that more salary cap doesn't mean anything. And here's the reason I think it doesn't mean anything. There are very few teams actually playing towards the salary cap. And so even the sides who are on the lower end of the salary cap, not on the higher end, are probably playing their stars in other deals on top of that. It's not very well policed. It's not like other leagues. So I'm going to say salary cap doesn't mean anything at all. But there was one other thing that I thought you might be interested in, is they're trying to do something that they're going to give players a 2-year ban if they get drafted into the auction and then they don't play that year, if they don't have a realistic reason for not playing. So international duty, family emergency, injury. But if, there might have been some players this year who just decided not to play, no names, Gus, and that does happen sometimes for many reasons. You put yourself into the draft, and then when the season comes around, you're like, you're not ready for it and everything else. But the interesting thing is, I don't understand why you need to ban these players for 2 years. If you're an owner and you're upset that this has happened, right, beforehand, and this player has been drafted and then didn't turn up, and you're an owner, you have the choice of whether you want to draft this player again, knowing that they may not turn up. Why do we need to ban them? Yeah.
Don't pay them, don't pick them. Very easy.
I find that really, really interesting. I'd be fascinated to talk to the people involved with that. But for me, I don't know if that works. And, once there is a contract in place, I would have thought there are legal ramifications of that. So again, I don't understand the whole idea of needing to ban these players.
No, there isn't a need for that at all. That's just rules for the sake of rules, I think. It's fine if, like you say, somebody pulls out because they've broken their leg or whatever, we understand it. But if someone's just mucking about, and there's we could list 6 people right now that are definitely mucking about, and like, I didn't really get as much money as I thought I would, and I chucked myself in at base price, and now they want to give it to me, and I've got to go to India for 8 weeks and not play. I don't want to go, but I don't quite know. I've heard lots of different people telling me about what actually happens, and like how much do you actually get paid? Like, do you get your money if you sit on the bench, or if you're injured, do you get 10% of it or whatever? I've heard lots of different numbers there. I don't understand the contracts and all that because I've not seen them. But yeah, the owner can just go, well, you mucked us about last year, so we're not going to pick you anymore, and we're not going to pay you. And I don't know. And also, there's absolutely loads of this guy that we think is getting 50 grand for the season or whatever it is, and that is getting all the runs and all the wickets. He's probably getting $500,000 in other ways, isn't he? He's getting free, I don't know, cars or shares or crypto or something. That'll be going on left, right, and centre. So that, again, that's a rule for rule's sake. If you don't like the player,
if you don't trust that they're going to come, then you don't need to get them. Anika says banned from the IPL. Yeah, I wasn't saying they were banned from all cricket. I don't know how you would do that anyway. But no, it's literally a ban from the IPL. But it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Rob. Here's what I think they should be talking about. I would get rid of the auction, but let's say they want to keep the auction. I would have two auctions. I would have an uncapped players auction, and I had a capped players auction. But I would stop using the word uncapped for people who haven't played for India, and it would be uncapped as in you have never played an IPL game before.
Okay.
And you've never been contracted for the IPL, whether it be overseas or local. So we have one draft for potential stars. So when these young players are coming through, that's where you draft all your stars. And then we have a second draft / auction, whatever you want to call it, for players who have played in the IPL before, but they haven't played very much. All right, so maybe they've played between, less than 20 games overall. And then the third thing I would bring in is free agency. I don't think MS Dhoni should have to have these random rules changed for him to be able to pick whether he wants to play or whatever. LeBron James signs a 1-year contract every year with the Lakers. He puts all the pressure on the Lakers, right? And he says, you guys better build a pretty good team around me because I'm only signing a 1-year contract and I can go. Because I'm LeBron James and I can do what I want because I've played in this league for 25 years. If you're, let's say, someone like Aaron Finch, who played for 83 different franchises, who was very exciting at different times, I think at a certain point in Aaron Finch's career, he should be able to pick where he goes for how much money and what kind of role he wants to play, right? And I don't understand why we haven't got to that point yet, because I actually think what that allows for is 2 auctions and free agency, which means throughout the year, we can have a constant discussion about all these things. We can have one auction where we're really obsessed about the next young player out of South Africa or some young kid in India. And then we can also then be obsessed about, wait a minute, why are they giving Ben Cutting $1 million a year? Sorry, Ben, to play in this. And then we have the whole free agency of, well, this player is now a star. Sky, I think someone was asking a question about Sky to you before, but are we in a position where Sky should be able to pick who he goes to in the future, or he can sign a long-term contract with a team?
Yeah. What about, so the way the Premier League football developed, and everyone thinks that that's one of the biggest leagues in the world. Well, it is, isn't it? So when it started, it was 2 foreigners you were allowed. You're allowed 2 people in your team who weren't from England. So even if they were Welsh or Irish or Scottish or whatever, that counts as non-English, right? And then it got to 3, I think, and then it was like, well, you can sort of, then they started bending the rules. It's like, well, you're Welsh, so that's sort of English, and you've played in England for ages, and that's sort of English as well. You know that, like, people always get around that. Cricket does loads of that, people playing for multiple countries, that absolute horse shit that happens. What about it will get there eventually, no restriction on overseas, have as many as you want. That if you really want to make it the most gun league possible, no restrictions, and then that would hurt. It won't happen anytime soon because it slightly hurts Indian cricket. There's an argument that it hurt English football for a bit, and then the counter argument is, well, just get better then, English players or Indian players.
Yeah,
get yourself in that team. It's going to be easier for you when the league's domestic anyway.
I think India is almost good enough that they could do it now. Honestly, I think it's if it was me, you're right. That would be something that I would bring in straight away because I think the depth of Indian cricket is so big, and I also love the idea of one owner deciding that they're going to have all Indian players. And another owner just being like, we're going all in on overseas. I think that's a really interesting development in the league, especially
it makes the IPL more fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, because in the Premier League, I mean, I'm not saying England isn't patriotic. All countries are patriotic, but England isn't patriotic the way India is patriotic, right? And so it's a really interesting thing from sales and marketing and promotion and how you look at all those different things. And different owners who might come in from overseas who are like, well, we don't care about having Indian stars. And other owners are like, well, okay, we can do that. I think that is the way forward. Just a couple of other quick ones from the chat. Seka says, the big auction is really important to make sure that some teams don't fall behind forever. Well, Bangalore's never won a title and Delhi's never won a title. So if your big auction worked, Seka, we would have already seen that by now. It doesn't work. The idea is with the big auctions to have a situation where teams are a bit more level. But that's also what the idea of the auction is. It doesn't need to be a big auction for you to be able to do that. If you are good at scouting, if you are good at player development, if you are good at developing talent, you shouldn't actually need to worry about this. The big auction helps crap teams stay slightly better than they should be over a long period of time. The best teams still come out on top. So the big auction doesn't actually help.
Fundamentally, though, what ruins it all and that model is that it's the same dozen people that sit there and ignore all stats and all clever stuff and all real numbers and what could this guy actually be good at. And then they just go, yeah, but we like this bloke, so he's getting paid. And that's what happens over and over again. And then you look at Delhi, at the side that Delhi tried to put out at the start of this IPL was people playing a computer game that don't know anything about cricket at the start. And you've got Ricky Ponting, who's one of the great cricket minds. You know that because of how he, not just how he played, how he talks whenever you hear him on commentary. You're like, oh, he's exactly what I want from a commentator. He's telling me stuff I don't know and what's going to happen here and what the plan should be and all this. You know he's got the brain, and then it's like, right, we've got 4 overseas bowlers that are all injured. Let's go with them. So because like Norkia is a big name on paper, he was crippled. Like he was one leg Norkia, so he's rubbish. Who's gonna play when he's injured? Oh, Jai Richardson. Yeah, but he's injured anyway. Yeah, but he looked really good in the big bash. It's just total horseshit that they're coming up with these teams. So it's not it doesn't really matter whether you have 50 auctions, you're going to get this problem because the guys with all the money are just the IPL. Sorry, everybody, but the franchises are basically a toy for rich people to play with. And then we watch whatever they come up with after.
Same with all top level professional sport, right?
Yeah. And it's a shame that maybe eventually one team goes right. And maybe Kohli's not going to retire from Bangalore in our lifetimes, but maybe one day, a team that hasn't won it forever, like Bangalore or Delhi, goes, let's just try and do it the Moneyball cricket way, right? We're going to think, we're going to play the game better. We're going to blast a power play and then not have a rigid batting order and be prepared to move people out if they're not doing the job. And we'll have, we'll scout people properly. Then it gets fun. Then you go, right, this team are really thinking, we're not going to get that for a while because you look at these owners and bear in mind, we had a team, the IPL gives it the big one in terms of we're the best league in the world and aren't we amazing? It booted out a team that was cheating for 2 years, made another franchise up and let them all play for it. Like the IPL's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense when you boil it down. It has to be, but it's indicative or symptomatic of cricket as a whole. Nobody's culpable when all this mad stuff happens. It's just like, oh well, never mind, sorry, you can't call yourselves Chennai for 2 years. And cricket goes, well, there's all these franchise leagues. Yeah, if you want, make up your own rules and see if that works for you. We don't care. Have a bash point, have a surge, do whatever you want. Like have random people catching with giant mitts on and they all win 1,000. Like who cares? Like it's just total not do whatever you want because the IPL is the biggest thing and we get all the money, so it doesn't matter. At some point, cricket's going to eat itself, and we're pretty close.
Just on the owners, when you were talking about that, I was thinking of Kerry Packer when he was doing the Rebel Leagues in 1977, and Ian Chappell came in and he said to Ian Chappell, "You're going to be my captain." And Ian Chappell was like, "Well, actually, Greg is the captain of the Australian team at the moment." And Kerry Packer said to him, "What do you think this is? A fucking democracy? You're my captain." and I've worked with I've worked with some of the ownership groups in the IPL, and you do that. You go up to them and you go, "Oh, what do you think of this?" Well, no, I like that guy. We're still at that level. And to be honest, it happens in mature leagues like the NBA and, Major League Baseball and all this sort of stuff. Like sometimes an owner will like a player. Sometimes an owner will like a coaching, a coach because they like them personally. So they keep them in. All these things happen. And so this idea that the mega auction or anything else is going to make things level, it's not, because there are some people making really smart, informed decisions, and trying to do the right things and put themselves in a position to win consistently. And there are other owners who are like, I would really like to hang out with this player and take photos with them for my Instagram, right? And that's always going to happen. There is no way of doing that. And you look at the NBA is a perfect example of like the Indiana Pacers are stuck in this middle ground because they're in a small market, and they're just like, all we need to do is make sure that we're roughly good enough to make the playoffs every couple of years, and we have some good young players coming through. We might never make a play to win the title. We saw Rajasthan do that for about 5 or 6 years as well. We've seen all those sorts of things. Just to finish the show, and Rob, you can't talk about this at all. Sid pointed out this during the show that if we got rid of the LBW law, Shane Watson would have become the next Bradman. And I can't think of a better way to finish that. Although I'm just going to throw this at you. Mike Hesson for England coach, says Jonathan Bron. But you're not allowed to talk about that, Rob, because we're over time. This has been the Cricket8 podcast. That right there is your Rob Barron. I am the Jarrod Kimber. We'll be back again next week as well. But also, obviously, Michelle and Mega will be around. But thanks again for joining us. Go over to cricket8.com. Sign up for all the things. There's a lot of stuff happening at Cricket 8 over the next little while. Obviously, we're making all these podcasts and everything else, but there'll be more live watch-alongs and all sorts of things coming up in the future here on Cricket 8.